Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood.
Welcome to Mom Jeans, the podcast. We are back this week. I am Lisa. I'm a mom of 2 girls. I'm not under 2. They're not under 2. Okay. Whew. Doing great. Nailing it. Shoot. Okay. Go ahead, Danielle. What are you?
Oh, me. I'm Danielle, and I'm a boy mom. I'm pregnant and I'm homeless. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not really homeless, but I'm living at my parents' house, as you can see. I'm still technically a military spouse until August, but we're on the road to civilian life, so that's fun.
Nice. But, congratulations to Ryan. Awesome. 20 years of service, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yay.
Yeah.
And he's retired. Yeah,
Such
that's
a big
awesome.
deal.
So cool.
I'm just glad it's all over. It was so stressful, but so fun, but like moving and everything, kind of moving. We're like in between, but yeah.
Nice. Well, cool. So today on the podcast, we have our good friends, Kristen, and you'll probably recognize Mickella's voice if you were listening to the podcast back in our early days. We have hit over a year of recording. I don't know if we ever mentioned that. So that was pretty cool and pretty exciting. I know. So
that's
over
amazing.
A year of recording.
That went by so fast.
Yeah, it did go by fast.
Yeah.
So anyways, we have Kristen and Mickella on today because we are going to talk to them about the decision to not have kids. But before we get into that, we're going to get a quick update on Danielle's pregnancy, how it's going. And rumor has it, she knows the sex of her next baby, the second baby. And I can't wait to find out because I have a guess.
Who am I going to be an auntie to?
Ooh. Well, first off, I think I'm almost 12 weeks. I think tomorrow I'll be 12 weeks pregnant. Still feeling pretty good, getting just the migraines. And I did cry really hard last week, but it was moving and it was just emotional. But other than that, I've been feeling pretty good. But yes, we did find out what we're having. And I didn't want to do like a whole reveal or anything. I got an email actually. It was like that I could check what is it? The test that they did. It wasn't just for the sex, but it was also for if it's high risk, low
genetics
risk kind of thing. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. And so Ryan, I told Ryan, I was like, hey, do you want to know? And so we were just laying in bed, and like he was like, yeah, let's do it. So it was just the 2 of us, which was kind of great. So it was just us. And then literally you had to click the button. I was like, are you sure you want to know? And I was like, I don't know. Yeah. After it's like, click it. And then it asked you a second time. I'm like, I don't know. Like, should we wait? I'm like, nah. But anyways, before I tell you, what do y'all think it is?
Oh gosh,
I think it's a boy.
To us. I kind of think it's a boy too.
One of each.
Yeah, just one. Thank goodness. Yeah. Any reasons why you think it's a boy, or just is it because I said I think I'm having a boy?
I feel like so far your pregnancy seems like it's very similar to your pregnancy with Weston.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I'm having a boy.
Yay!
So, Weston's got a little brother.
Yay!
Yeah. That's funny. A lot of people guess girl, but yeah. And then Ryan was like, dang it. I'm like, what? And he was like, well, now you're going to want to try for a girl. And I was like, I never said that. It sounds like you're going to want to try to have a girl. And he was like, I don't know. We'll have to see. I was like, but that's how you end up with 3 boys. So.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Or 4 boys.
Yeah.
Our neighbors ended up with not wanting to be, they wanted to be done after their second, but decided not to do anything about it. So if it happened, it happened, and then got pregnant with twins. And they were like, yeah, not great. Not great.
Don't run that risk, Danielle.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, we talked about it. We're thinking about like whatever happens. Because I'm saying like after this, I won't, what I'm feeling right now, I don't want to do the medicated like cycle or anything. Yeah. But I was like, if it gets to a certain point that it's been too long, then we'll go the like snipping route. but we'll see when we get to that bridge.
Nice. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yay.
I was actually happy with a boy. So I already know what to expect. And
yeah.
but then I also think about like my friends that have just boys and how crazy their lives are and like chaotic, but it's going to be great.
That's exciting. Well, you're going to have to keep us updated because I think you still have to find a doctor out there, right? Or did you find one?
Kind of, not really.
Okay.
I have an appointment, but I think I'm going to switch to a different provider. So, and then here it's kind of like you go to, it's not like one doctor, you go to the,
right.
Like
the
this place is called, and then you see
want.
whoever.
That's how it is here too.
Yeah.
I think you guys having 2 boys makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like you guys are built for it.
Yeah,
yes.
I think so. Yeah, Ryan really thought he wanted a girl, and I was like, girls are great until they hit puberty, and because I just remember me and my sister, it's like, yeah, I don't know, like I think I'm just cool with boys, but
that surprises me.
I would be
considering that
he
only has a brother. I thought that he maybe would have been really excited to know that Weston could potentially have the same relationship that him and Bryce have. But
I think a lot of I can't speak for a lot of people, but I think a lot of guys do dream about having a daughter, like a little daughter that looks up to him and like adores him. And
that makes sense.
We can get Brandon on then and ask him what he thinks about it.
That daddy-daughter connection is real.
Mm-hmm.
And then him just talking to his friends that have daughters and just talking about like how they feel differently with their daughter than they do their boys. And I think that's kind of like they were talking it up. And so he kind of got excited for that. But
yeah,
he's like, I'm happy. And like, are you? No, he's good.
Do you remember after I had Aubrey, it was like a while, like 2 months of me being like, man, I'm never going to have a boy. And I always pictured myself to have one of each. And now I'm like, oh, I can't imagine having a boy. I'm so glad I have 2 girls. I'm so glad.
Well, and could you imagine not having Aubrey?
No, she is
like, that's the other way to look at it.
They're totally different kids. And it's so fun to do, to be with. We had a Mickella date last week with the girls. So Mickella came out with us downtown and she picked all the places we were going to go. It was awesome. And Hannah just adored her. She adores Mickella, Miss Kella.
No.
She talks about her all the time. It's really sweet. So yeah.
I adore her.
Well, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Thank
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. So this is, it's always interesting to me because there was a time in my life where I did not picture having kids. And then when I met Brandon, it kind of like, we both kind of shifted our opinions on having kids and wanted to have kids together. And when I wasn't thinking I was going to have kids, I kind of toyed with the idea of like, okay, if I hit 35 and I don't have kids, maybe I'll have kids by myself, which now thinking about it is like wild to think that people do this by themselves. I can't imagine, but it's weird. It's weird to have gone back and forth of like, oh, I won't have kids, but I'll be able to do everything I want to ever do in the world and nobody's going to hold me back. And then also like thinking about, people talking to you about kids and, oh, you don't know that love until you have it. And I find it so interesting when people clearly have that decision of, I don't want to have kids. And I think it's such it's so awesome to have clarity in anything in life because I'm a wishy-washy person sometimes. So I'm fascinated by the decision and I want to hear what all went into the factors of you guys deciding, how long it took you to decide. Did you always think you weren't going to have kids or have kids, one way or the other? And I guess that's making big assumptions that you guys could have kids because that could also be a factor of why you chose not to have kids. Because I guess you could go down the road of adoption or IVF or what have you. But that was a lot of questions packed into one. So let's start with one question. Kristen, did you always know you weren't going to have kids or didn't think you would have kids?
I did think I would have kids in my early 20s or even mid and late 20s. I think I just assumed that I would because I looked up to my mom, I looked up to my grandmother, and so by definition, of course, they had kids. And so it was kind of what I expected to have as the next phase of life. And it was only through talking about that a ton with my then husband. I'm now divorced from him and have a new wonderful partner, but talking about kids with him and really thinking through it. And I would talk about why I wanted kids, and I would say something like, "Oh, I want someone to take care of me when I'm older," and he was like, "That's a terrible reason." Too, he was absolutely correct. And I just kind of thought through it all, and started to look at other people in my life besides my mom and my grandmother who, I looked up as different role models and just never really thought through what their life was like. And I realized that there's plenty of ways to be in this world. There's plenty of ways to be happy, to exist, to make your impact in, the planet, the world, whatever it is you want to make an impact in. And eventually came to the conclusion that I didn't really want them. So yeah, that was kind of my story. It wasn't one specific thing that caused me to change my mind. It was just a lot of different things.
So I'm sorry. So, and this can be probably too personal of a question, so you can absolutely deny answering this, and I'll cut it. But do you feel if you met your now partner back when you were younger that decision might have been different?
Funny story, my now partner also didn't want kids. And he had a vasectomy. He decided more for environmental reasons that he didn't want kids. And so that decision was made before me too. So probably I would have made the same decision, just with a different partner. Sure. The discussion might have been different, but yeah. I mean, not to say that there's not a scenario out there where life would have turned out differently, but I'm very happy with my decision, and
Good.
It's not something that I regret at all. It's not something that I really think about, honestly, on a day-to-day basis. It takes up exactly 0 brain cells on any given day, whether I think about, oh, I should have had kids or not. So, yeah, I think it was the right decision for me.
That's awesome. Mickella?
First of all, Lisa, I have to say that I love that you said that you are wishy-washy sometimes. That was perfect.
Yes.
I feel like I have a similar history, I guess, to Kristen of when I was younger. I'll even go back to like my teens. I was certain that when I graduated from high school, I was going to go to college. And then I was going to graduate from college and I was going to start working and I was going to find a husband. We were going to get married and have kids. And I never questioned that. I thought that was normal. I thought that's what most people did. And I was fine with that. And so, in my teens and then into my 20s, as I started dating and started thinking about like, what do I want out of a partner? And is this somebody that I can see a future with? Of course, kids was always just an expectation that, is this boyfriend somebody that I want to have kids with? Because that was always that was what was going to happen. And I had dated guys before my husband that had we stuck together, we probably would have had kids because I knew that they really wanted it. And at that point in my life, I was, I guess, on board to have kids. I didn't question it, I guess, really is what it came down to. But flash forward a few years and I meet my now husband, and I'm trying to remember if he had strong opinions about it when we first started dating. And I don't think he did. I think by the time we started dating, we were like mid-20s. We were both really trying to make a name for ourselves in our careers and figure out what we wanted to do. And so kids was kind of not off the table, but it just wasn't a priority. And so we would constantly check in with each other like, hey, this is a big topic. And obviously this relationship is going somewhere. So, we need to make sure that we're on the same page about this kid thing, or at least talk about it. And so it's one of those conversation topics that we would bring up every few months or, twice a year, maybe. And I feel like every single time one of us would bring it up, both of our responses were like, maybe not. We'll see. And I think we're both very okay with that. But I got to a point where I decided I personally don't want to have kids past a certain age. And I was approaching that age. And so it became more of a, okay, let's actually shit or get off the pot here. Let's make a decision. And we need to be okay with it. And it got to the point where we just kind of both decided, no, that's not the path that we want to go down. If it happened, we would be having kids. But if it was up to us, we had decided no. And I think one thing that really worked for me, or that was really eye-opening for me, is I did sort of a mental exercise to say, okay, what would scare me more tomorrow? To find out that I was pregnant, or to find out that I had no chance of having kids? I could never have my own kids. And that was a very easy question for me to answer. I immediately thought, if I found out tomorrow that I couldn't have kids, I'm sure part of me would be kind of bummed, but the other part of me would be like, okay, my decision's made. But if I found out tomorrow that I was pregnant, I think I would have a full-on panic attack. So that was a pretty eye-opening moment for me. And in talking with my husband, he kind of felt like, I think we're good. I think we'd be fine to not have kids. So that's kind of how our journey brought us to where we are today.
So I have 2 points to make really quickly. One being, I think the hardest part for me when you guys would tell me like, oh, we're not going to have kids. But if we have a kid, we already have the name picked out. And I'm like, how does that work? Like, how do we get there? Can you share the name with us?
Oh gosh. Oh yeah. So this is silly. And just for the record, we also have like 10 dog names picked out already. And we've got 4 cat names picked out already. We'll never have a cat either.
Never?
But,
you don't want my cat Loki?
No. Side tangent. Bryce has decided for both of us that if we get a cat, he gets a motorcycle.
Oh.
That's not something I've ever agreed to. And I don't see how that's remotely fair. But that is the decision that he has made for our family.
He really dislikes cats?
He says he really dislikes cats, but that's another story for another day. I don't know. Danielle, how did he do with Loki?
He did okay. Yeah. Loki's kind of cuddly now. Yeah. He used to not be. But he still says, he says he hates cats.
He does say he hates cats. And then we go over to my mom's house and the first thing he does is pick up the cat. So anyway, the name that we had that we would have probably chosen for a boy or a girl is Remy for her first name. When we lived in Washington, we would go to a AAA hockey league, if you will. I don't know what it's called for hockey. That's terrible. We had season tickets for like 4 years. Anyway, our favorite player, his name was Remy. And so that's where that name came from. So that name came during the time that it was still a maybe for us to have kids. And so we just really liked the name Remy. Middle name would have been a debate. If we were to have a boy, Bryce was set on the middle name being Theophilus.
Yep.
Remy Theophilus. So I don't know. You can put that in whatever column you think is appropriate for reasons to or to not have a kid. But to me, that would have been a really hard fight for me, and I don't know if I would want to do that to a kid. So yeah, Remy Theophilus. If anybody steals it, just let me know. Let me know how that kid's life turns out.
Give her credit. Yes. So my next question is, Danielle, I know you had some opinions when you found out that Bryce and Mickella decided not to have kids.
Yeah, well, I kept them to myself, obviously. No, I'm just kidding. But obviously, I was very happy. I looked at her and I was like, I'm glad that you guys like made this decision and you don't like have to stress about it. And, that's awesome that you could come to this conclusion. But also then I told her, I was like, but listen, when you first told me that, I had like a physical response, like emotional. Well, one, I was upset because Ryan knew for months. He's like, oh yeah, I thought I told you. I'm like, no. So I found out. And we had been drinking, so of course I'm a little emotional. But I got all teary-eyed and like lump in my throat, and I was just like, I'm really happy for you guys, but then I was like, I'm also sad, you know, that Weston won't really have like cousins. And she's like, how often do you hang out with your cousins? I'm like, okay, I get that. Touche. I do have one really good cousin, Brittany, who like I talk to at least like once a week. But it just kind of made me sad, but totally get it. And obviously it's not my decision, and it's I don't know. I don't know why I felt that way, I guess cuz it's pretty permanent, but also like I'm happy for you guys, if that makes sense. Can I be sad and happy at the same time? That's kind of how I felt. But
I think so.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Just because I mean, I know that everyone has told you this before, and it's not helpful when people say this, but you guys would be great parents. But you're like a great aunt and uncle, and so that's awesome. And you do, like you said, you get to spend all the time with the kids, but then you get to send them home after, and then have your peace and quiet. So I get
and
it.
A clean house.
Yeah.
What?
That's true.
What's that like?
Right.
That's a great segue to one of my questions of how do you guys feel when people say you would be good parents? Like, do you take an offense to that? Like, oh, you should have been parents, like people putting their opinions on you? Or do you kind of say, oh, thank you, that's very sweet of you to say, but no?
I want to hear Kristen's.
You want to start, Mickella, since you just got this comment? Okay.
No, I know I said it, but I was just saying what I said at the moment. But I obviously know it's like not helpful. Just like, yeah.
For me, I don't take offense. I think it's said in the spirit of a compliment. So, I kind of agree with them. Like, I would have been a good mom. I had a great mom, and so I learned from her. I think she was wonderful. I think I probably would have been a good mom. I'm a caregiver personality. I think I would have been, I would have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of it. But I don't know. I think it doesn't really. It's just like saying like, oh, you would have been. You made a really good dinner or something. Oh, it doesn't really change my mind on what I wanted. It's just a compliment. Like, oh, you would have looked good in that dress. I don't know, something like that. It doesn't really hit anywhere that makes me think twice about my decision, I think.
Good.
Right. Like you have really good qualities, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Like, thanks. Hey.
Yeah, you might look good in the dress, but you might be uncomfortable, right? And so I think that's what it comes down to is, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't make me think twice about my decision. I think it's said from a spirit of complimenting someone, but it's also in some ways maybe a lack of, how do I say this? A lack of ability to think about someone else's life, a lack of ability to think of a different way of being in the world. I don't feel like I'm a lesser person because I'm not a mom. I'm still doing good things in this world. I still feel like I have a really fulfilling life. I have more time to foster dogs. I have more time to, I don't know, do other things for myself or for the world or for my friends. So, I choose to think that it's a compliment. And I guess I'll just leave it there.
I think that's a great answer.
I also lean toward the compliment side. I mean, that's my initial reaction when somebody says that is, thank you. That is a big compliment, because I think we all know that there are plenty of moms and dads out there that are not good role models. They're not good teachers. They're not good parents. And so for somebody to say, like, you have those qualities that you could raise a proper human being, because I think at the end of the day, that's what people are trying to say, right? I definitely think that that's a compliment. However, I have more than once felt like it was sort of a backhanded compliment of like, you and Bryce would make really great parents, and because you've made the decision to not have kids, you're bad people for that, for not using that quality, for not using that potential skill, for not giving a child that experience to have you guys as parents. And I don't know that that's been the intention of what's been said, but I have kind of felt that edge to it more than once. So, yeah.
I do think I was one of those people that did that to you, or like probably made you feel that way because I was so persistent on it. And after I had Hannah, I think I told you that there was an Instagram that came up and was like, I just want people to be in misery with me as I go through being a mother. And that's not the right reason. And, I think it's been super helpful to be friends with, of the 7 girls in our group, 4 of you don't have kids. And it's been awesome for me as a mom that wants to still have a life outside of my kids, because you guys, if I text you and say, hey, anybody up for a drink tonight? You're like, hell yeah. Like I can do that. Whereas like the mom friends are like, oh God, I got to ask my husband. And, this one's sick today. And this one's really clingy to me. And da, 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 da. And I'm like,
it's right in the middle of bath time.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's been, I think I had a hard time with it in the beginning. Like it's like, Kristen, that was a huge point that you just made to me, that like, just because I don't have kids doesn't mean I'm not doing other things with my life. And I'm not, I'm missing out on all this because I'm not a mom. Like that's not the case at all. And I think, like I'm so envious, Kristen, like, so we have a shared calendar in our friend group, and like seeing all the trips that Kristen and Rob are going on in these last 2-3 years, I'm like, my dream. What? Come on. They're going again to these amazing places. Like, so awesome. And I'm so appreciative now of my friends that don't have kids, and the true decision to have them, because not have them, because I think there was a point that I was like, let's just try and get pregnant and I'm not going to process the thought of like what this means to actually have kids. Let's just get pregnant and figure it out. And that's kind of the way I live my life, and right, wrong, or indifferent. Right. And I do think if I really thought about it, with the depression I went through while I was pregnant, the Mickella, what you were describing of like the terrified fear of having a kid, I went through that, and I had to get a therapist at 6.5 months pregnant. And that is not the time to be like, what did I do? That was not, I should have really thought it through and been fully, truly committed to what I wanted to do. Now I don't regret my girls for 1 second, but it truly changes the course of your life. My relationship with Brandon is completely different than it was. They say that people who don't have kids are a lot happier in their relationships, and, have obviously more money, a lot more fulfilling lives sometimes. And, there's a lot to be said. And, I think it's interesting. So jumping into my next question, sorry, go ahead, Danielle.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment real quick. Well, because Mickella, you made me think of it, but I just appreciate like how much energy you and Bryce have for Weston, because Ryan and I are just so tired. So it is nice because when you go, because you guys don't have kids, so it's just like, okay, they have all the energy, and that's how I feel like when his parents come and my parents come, and like my sister, it's like, oh, I could take a break for a second while you play. So, because you're not tired. I mean, I'm sure you're tired, but you're not like,
we're not burnt out on the kid, the kid management.
Right. You're not burnt out.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And I think that's to Kristen's point of like, we're still contributing to society and to bettering the lives of kids in other ways. And so that's kind of how I think of it, is not only in those situations, like Lisa was talking about our little girls' date last week, not only did I get to interact with Aubrey and Hannah and give them a different experience and go and do new things, but I mean, I'd like to hope that to some degree it also gave Lisa at least a little bit of a break, right? Like the entertainment
Huge.
factor wasn't all on Lisa.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a win-win. And then I get to hang out and cuddle and run around the store with my shoes off like an idiot and greet everybody at the front door. You know, if I did that without Hannah, I would have looked like a psycho. So.
As she was stuffing a million rocks in a dinosaur bag.
Yeah, it takes all people. Like some of my, I don't know, closest, like my, how do I say this? I had a lot of aunts growing up, or family friends who didn't have kids. In retrospect, that would play with me, that would take me to science museums, that would do things with me, and yeah, it's fun. So I'm maybe not as good with babies as Mickella is, but I think I'll start to shine when your kids get older, and I can do things outside with them and show them, I don't know, introduce them to nature.
I feel like I'm not good with babies. My babies are fine, but other people's babies, they're like, "You want to hold them?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." It's weird.
I don't have interest in other people's kids either. Like, I don't care what age they're. Like, I just don't like. Danielle, to be fair, your kid is the cutest kid on the planet. But like, I feel bad because I think other parents that we hang out with are like, oh, let me hold Aubrey. And I'm like, okay, if you want, like, you don't have to do that just because you like think I'm going to feel bad if you don't, because I don't want to hold your kid. So
that's me. I don't know why.
I know. I get it.
They're like, you want to hold him? I'm like, no, I'm good.
I mean, I kind of feel like I'm the same way. And, if I'm in a room with a kid, I'm not immediately like, oh my gosh, I need to interact with that kid. I need to hold that baby. My sister has total baby fever.
She does.
And if there's a baby, she immediately is like, I need to hold. And I'm like, okay, I'll go get another drink. But if there's a dog in the room, especially if it's a puppy, I mean, yeah, game over. No baby fever here. But I think I even struggle with like the really younger kids. And I don't know if any of you guys noticed that when your kids were younger, but like Hannah's age she's at the age where she's interactive and she's asking questions and she's speaking in full sentences, which still blows my mind. She's speaking in full sentences that make sense. Yeah. And so I feel like it's more fun to be at that age where you're seeing them learn and they're being curious and they're still goofy and fun. So that's really the age that I start to feel like I can contribute more, or at least, I don't know, feel like I have a little bit more of a relationship with kids.
So this past weekend, Kristen and Mickella, I think you guys will both appreciate this, and this is something I want to invite you guys to in the future. I wanted to go take Hank for a walk, and I was like, I'm going to go take Hank for a walk, and Hannah's like, I'm coming with you. And I was like, no, you hurt your leg at the trampoline park earlier. Like, I don't want to carry you the whole way. I want to go 2.5, 3 miles. And she's like, I'm coming with you. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll take you with me. And sure enough, like 5 seconds into the walk, she's like, you carry me. I'm like, I'm not carrying you. She's like, my leg hurts. I'm like, oh my gosh. So then I was like, all right, you know what? Like at that point, it was like 1:00, and it's always like, by the time you get to afternoon, you're like, what time's bedtime? Just get me to bedtime. This has been a rough day. It already feels like it's midnight. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to just let her do whatever she wants. So we like came upon like a bike ramp or something. And she's like, wanted to explore it. So she got a stick and she started pushing the dirt around. And like, she's like, finding things in there. She's asking me all these questions about these rocks she's finding. And I'm like, not a care in the world. I'm just going to sit and let her take as much time as she wants in the woods, because I'm in the woods and that's my happy place. And if that makes her happy, maybe she'll want to keep going and she'll want to be my hiking buddy one day. Right. But I was like, I feel like as long as you guys are patient, because she moves at her own pace, but Kristen, she loves bugs. Kristen sent us an amazing video this morning. Was that this morning? Of people introducing snakes to babies, and the parents being like, "Oh my God, what do they do?" But if you don't show the fear to the kids, like I'm trying really hard not to show. I'm not afraid of spiders. I'm not afraid of things, but like Hannah wants to like touch everything, and she's seen snakes in the wild and she's seen tarantulas in the wild, and she went to go pet a snake one time. And I was like, okay, I don't know anything about snakes up here because we don't see snakes as much, obviously, as down in the valley. And I was like, and some like 4 or 5-year-old kid goes, he has a black head. It means he's poisonous. And I was like, oh shoot, like we got to get away from it. And Hannah was like, I'm going to go pet it. I'm going to go pet it. I was like, Han, how do you feel when people pick you up or touch you when you don't like it? She's like, not good. And I was like, so let's not do that to the snake. But I didn't want to show her like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. Like I'm, and I think that's such a fun
that's a great
thing
way to handle it.
It's such a fun thing that Kristen, so Kristen's passed. She is, well, I don't know describe it. I was going to say a bug master.
I'm an ecologist, or used to be an ecologist, but I studied bugs, frogs, monkeys, all different types of birds, but insects mostly. And I used to, so I was a scientist, but long story short, I used to run these insect outreach programs in a couple different places I lived for elementary school students, sometimes in the schools and sometimes at like a science museum. And it was
cool.
Fascinating to watch the fear of bugs, insects, scientifically, bugs transferred from, no, it's okay. I was laughing at myself. Get transferred from the parent to the kid. You could see it in real time, that fear get transferred, because I would be holding, let's say, a hissing cockroach or something, and the kids would be like, they would come running up to me. They would be like no fear. They would turn, they would look back at their parent, or in some cases their teacher. The teacher would have this like horrified look on their face, and the kid's expression changed immediately. As soon as they saw that the parent had fear, that fear was then in the kid. And then that doesn't go away. So, it's like that was a learned moment right there that could have been prevented had the parent or the teacher, whatever, expressed curiosity. It's like, clearly this cockroach is fine. Like, I'm holding it, it's not biting me. I wouldn't be giving it to your, third grader if, this thing was toxic or poisonous or whatever.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And I think that's the exciting thing for me. Like, how people fly, move in and out of Flagstaff all the time. But as long as we keep all these people around, like it really does take a village to raise a kid. And I am so thankful for the people that we have around, because like, I can't wait to bring the girls with Kristen, where Kristen can give them that knowledge that I never in a million years could do. And I think that's really exciting to, as much as you don't want your own kids, it's not like you're like, no, I don't want to teach your kids. I don't want to be around your kids. You guys are so great about, that you don't want to see them every day, which I understand, but like if we have a teaching moment, I think they'll love that. And I'm super excited for that. So getting back on track here.
Hang on. I have a really important question.
Yeah. Okay.
Kristen, do you have any cockroaches currently?
I do. I have 4.
There you go. Yeah. Set up a play date. Set up a cockroach play date.
Oh, Hannah would love
I'll be the person with the reaction. Let me just get that out of the way.
I live in a cave, not in a store.
Weston would too. He loves bugs.
Yeah.
I love spiders. And I like you said, I try not to have a reaction, but cockroaches like creep me out the way they move.
Okay, so back on topic. Did your parents, your partner's parents, your siblings, anybody have any reactions? We heard Danielle's reaction, but to you choosing not to have kids, or did they help you in your decision, hurt you in your decision one way or the other?
I can go first. I feel very lucky on this front that my parents were adamant that it was my decision. They never put any pressure on me to have kids or to not have kids either way. Even though, like I said, my mom was an amazing mom. She was a kindergarten teacher as well. Like she was an amazing mom. She would have been an amazing grandmother. And even despite that, even though I know she loves kids, she still always said, this is your decision. You're going to be the one who raises them. This is not my decision about your life. And I'm so thankful that she was like that I never felt any angst over, I need to do this for my mom or something like that. So yeah, for me, that wasn't a factor in my decision. And actually, when I was knew I was going to come on and talk to you guys, I asked her recently how she felt now, looking back on it. Now the decision is made. Is there any part of her that wishes she was a grandmother at this point? And she said no. She said she's happy with her life. She has, found her other way of being in the world as well without being a grandmother. And my mom has this ability to be content at her core.
That's awesome.
She's just amazingly happy and content, and can also find her own way of being in the world without needing it to be, my offspring to make or break her life. So I appreciate that about her. And it was interesting. She said that when she hangs out with her friends who are potentially grandparents at this point, she said that she's surprised how much stress they have about it. So that wasn't something I had thought about, that, the stress doesn't end when you're being a parent. Apparently the stress continues when you're a grandparent, because now they're talking about, my daughter isn't raising, the kids the way I would want to raise them, or, they don't live close enough and I don't get to see them very often, or in some cases, the parents haven't been able to take care of the kids, and so the grandparents are now raising the kids. And so, I think her friends, when she hangs out with her friends who are in their, 60, 70, 80s, are actually pretty angsty about the grandkids. So I think that was my story in terms of, it wasn't part of my decision, and then I think my mom is still okay with it.
Good. That's good.
She sounds amazing. Sorry, did you hear the loud noise? That scared me. Anyways, my basement's creepy. But your mom sounds awesome and amazing, and that's awesome, because on my side of the family that didn't happen. Like, when you're having a baby, you're not getting any younger, things like that. So
I think that is
no pressure is amazing. Yeah.
Do you know?
I do feel really lucky.
Do you know how Rob's parents felt about his decision to have a vasectomy and not have kids?
They supported him. I think his mom is a little bit more vocally sad about the fact that he decided to not have kids. But it's also been, I think she's also been supportive. That decision was made a little bit before me, but
right.
I think there have been a couple more comments on his front that, it would have been nice to have a grandkid.
Yeah. I will say from the in-law standpoint, and just as a reminder for everybody, Danielle is my sister-in-law. Yes. Our husbands are brothers. So yes,
I was almost at our brothers or husbands.
I almost
right.
I don't even know what I almost said, but it was going to be really wrong. I think I got it right.
Yeah, you got it right.
My husband is anyway. We have the same in-laws, and they really are. They're truly incredible. And I actually don't know that they ever came out and asked us when we were going to have kids, or if we were going to have kids. I think they always just kind of were like, Bryce and Mickella are going to do what Bryce and Mickella want. We're going to support them however they need to be supported. And that's pretty much going to be it. So, I think if we were to ask them, really, truly, how do you guys feel about it? I have no doubt that they'd say, well, it's kind of a bummer. We think you guys would have made great parents, but we totally get it. So, zero pressure from that side of things. I think my dad's kind of the same way of, he's never said, my dad's not a very emotional or touchy-feely guy. So when I told him, Bryce got a vasectomy and we've decided not to have kids, he was just kind of like, oh, well, that's too bad. And I think that was probably about the end of that. I actually think he turned it into a political conversation somehow about, I know, shocking, about my generation not having enough kids and that it's going to destroy the planet somehow. Anyway, my mom, on the other hand, who I am very close with, has strong opinions, and she, like you, Danielle, she had a very visceral, a very physical reaction to it. And we had told her leading up to Bryce having a vasectomy that we had made that decision. We decided we didn't have kids. Bryce is probably going to get a vasectomy, blah, blah, blah. And when she found out that he actually had it done, she lost it. She just started bawling, and that was horrible because I felt guilty about a decision that me and my husband made about our future. She knew that that was the path that we were planning to go down, but I think her just hearing those words and knowing like, oh, they really are not going to change their mind at this point, I think really hit her hard. And we had a conversation about it because to me, it made me feel guilty when it should not have, but it also made me feel like she didn't think that we had really made our mind up. Like she was just waiting for us to change our minds. So that didn't feel good for me either, but we've moved past that. It's all good. I think that there's still maybe some hope in the back of her mind that she'll never tell me that his vasectomy will become reversed.
Yeah.
But, and as far as your question, Lisa, about families influencing the decision to or to not have kids, when I think of why, like the reasons why Bryce and I decided not to have kids, I can't point to any one thing. And I think I said this really early on in the podcast when I was talking about the decision not to have kids. But I have watched my parents go through 3 divorces collectively now. And I do think that probably had some weight to the decision to not have kids. Of nothing's guaranteed. I don't want to put kids through that. I don't want to have to deal with that. You know, if Bryce and I were to decide to not be together anymore, I wouldn't want to have kids in the mix of that. So, not that I'm planning on that, but going through it as much as I have. I mean, it's a reality for me. It's not like a what if that could happen to some people. So I do think that probably played into it a little bit. I don't think that that's the decision. Or
I always wondered
the sole reason. I
always wondered that with you. And I think we had that conversation at some point about that, because I do, you know, like I grew up so worried about getting divorced more so than finding somebody to get married to, because I was so afraid of the rejection, because that was like my childhood. I felt like I got rejected a lot, mostly from guys, and guys were the priority, right? It was your body image. I wasn't skinny enough or what have you, right? And it's such an interesting thing to think about putting kids through that, because Mickella, like I know your backstory, and I do think that it's a lot to put kids through a divorce. It's really hard. And no matter the age, I don't think, you know, it's such an interesting thing. I had a friend in high school who her parents waited till she graduated high school to get divorced, but her parents lived miserably, and we all knew they were miserable. Nobody wanted to go to their house because they were so afraid of their parents fighting in front of us. And the day she graduated, they filed for divorce. The day she graduated.
Wow. I will say
crazy.
I am glad my parents didn't wait. Yeah. I am glad that, you know, my mom made that decision for herself. And when I think it was 9-ish when, I think it was 7 when they filed for divorce, 9 when it was finalized. That's how nasty it was. It took 2 years for this divorce to get finalized. And I'm glad they didn't wait, because same thing. I mean, and I've had this conversation with people too that have kids or that maybe are, you know, unhappy in a relationship, and it's like, do not stay together for the kids. So many people think that that's the thing to do, and it's like, you can tell when a relationship, you're not being a good role. Exactly. So you're teaching the kid that, in my opinion, what an unhealthy relationship looks like, but you're flying it under the flag of a healthy relationship or a healthy, happy family. And then, you know, I think one of the most common statements in a divorce when people do decide to get divorced when they're young is they tell the kids, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Mm. This isn't because of you. But then it's like, if you wait to get divorced until the kid's out of high school, then it's like, well, then it almost does feel like there's some onus on it, right? Like, you guys stayed in this relationship and have been terribly unhappy this whole time because of me. So I don't know. There's no pretty way to have a divorce. Although I have seen some people that have done it very gracefully and that have done it with the best intentions of kids and have actually been civil with each other. That was not my experience.
Right.
It
like
can happen.
My friend who lives in Phoenix, I'm not going to say her name, but it'd be cool if she wanted to come on the podcast, because she did get divorced. But she's like they co-parent so well. They even like during Halloween, they would still get together and like do family like costumes until their son was like, you guys don't have to dress up with me anymore. But like they just do it so well. They'll like FaceTime each other and talk about what their son did, and then they have a dog too that they had when they were married, and it just goes with her son back
That's
and forth.
awesome.
Yeah, so I was like, you need to write a book on how to co-parent, how to, like, before the divorce might have not been the best, but like after, they're both like so happy and just they get along so well. It's like it's amazing. I think that's the only two people I've seen that co-parent like really, really well. So
I've seen a couple other people, but it is definitely a rarity. But yeah, like that would be a really good book of how to divorce gracefully and co-parent well.
Right. Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting. Like it'd be hard for me to not be able to see the girls every day. Like I think I would struggle with that. So I think it would be very, hopefully nothing I ever have to experience, but you never know. You just never know.
Mickella, I'm curious, did your sister have anything to say about it?
About what part?
Yeah, not having kids.
Yes. I think she doesn't love the decision either. I mean, I think, my sister and I are also very close. And I think growing up, we always had this idea that we would both have kids around the same age, and they, our kids would grow up and be the closest cousins and best friends, and that we would raise kids together. And it's obviously not how life turned out. I do think that she's bummed about it, but I think that she lived with Bryce and I for like 4 years. And so I think she got to know our relationship better than probably anybody else on the planet. And so I think that she had an appreciation for, like, they have talked about this very frequently. Like, this has been an ongoing conversation. The decision to not have kids was not made on a whim. And so I think when that decision was final, she had kind of already been involved enough in the conversations to know that it really was probably coming to that. And so even though she was disappointed and saddened by it, I never got a sense of guilt out of her. I think it was more of just like, shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing too. Like my brother and I always talked about having kids, and if I had bad kids, I would send them to him because he was a really bad kid, so he'd know how to parent them. And it's like such an interesting thing when you grow up together as siblings and you have these, but really, like you guys have all said, is like you grew up and it was just expected you were going to have kids. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like you had an option, right? Like it's such an interesting thing. And
I think one thing that my sister, her initial reaction is like, oh shoot, dang it, you guys aren't going to have kids. Not the cards I would have chosen for you guys, but I get it. But then, right after that is good. You guys are going to be very involved in our kids' lives, assuming that they get the opportunity to have kids. And we're going to take advantage of that.
The world is so different for kids these days. And, and every generation says that. I'm sure in 80, they're like, the world's going to crap. But, I think that's
my grandma always said that. The world is so much harder for you guys than it ever was for us. She used to say that to me all the time. And it was like, really? Like, why so? And she would say, well, you guys are, women are expected to have jobs now. We were never expected to do that. Like my grandma didn't get her license until she was 35 years old.
Wow.
And reluctantly got it. Right. And so many different examples of why she said that. But I do think it's an interesting thing. The social media thing. Like I just keep hoping that they ban it all before the girls are at the age where they can have it. And, you know, like Brandon and I've talked about it. There's a pledge out there of not giving kids cell phones until they're 10. And then there's another one and not giving it to them until they get to high school. And I'm like, I'll sign it. Like, I would love that. I think that is such a detriment to children. Like, I had body image issues and fear of rejection issues, constantly, and I didn't have any of that. And I still, you know, I didn't have any social media or any of those things, and I still had all those issues. I cannot even imagine, you know, it's so hard. It's hard to make these decisions for somebody else, you know. Like I said to Brandon, I think the reason I make the girls so much food for the girls rather than us buying it is because it's the one thing I feel like I can control with them, you know. Like, at least in my house, I know what's coming into my house and what I can provide you. If you go on a play date, I can't even control that, right? Like, parents ask you like, oh, is it okay if I give them this? And it's like, yeah, I guess. Like, I don't really want that though. You know, it's hard to battle the in-laws on that sometimes. Like, when they're still giving them red dye 40 and then they're, you know, giving them like all the stuff that I have read enough about to be like, there's question enough to know I'm not willing to put that risk on my child, but I know that older they get, the less control I get over that. And that's really hard. It's a really hard thing that I never thought about before deciding to have kids, of how this was all going to go. Right. You don't think about all that. You think, oh, I'm going to have a cute little baby. Didn't realize that. Yeah, exactly. A cute little baby is going to be 3 years old and throwing my own parenting back in my face. And it's like, oh boy, this is
why, or, you know,
the why, you know what, the why,
what's the world that we're leaving to the next generation?
I need like a Kristen encyclopedia so that you can answer all the stuff that she comes up with. Like, why is the moon moving further away from us when we're moving closer to it? And I'm like, you're freaking 2 years old. Why are you asking me this question? Like, I have no idea. And so then I come home and I'm like, Brandon, why is that happening? And he's like, perspective with the trees. And I'm like, is it? I don't know. Like, this, I don't like this. You can't be 2 years old asking me questions I can't answer already. This isn't going to bode well for me. So, I mean, it's awesome. I love how smart she is. Like, I was trying to teach her yesterday how to say 3 because she says free. And I'm like, the 3. And she's like, Mommy, I don't know how to say that. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. All right, smarty pants. I'll stop. But anyway.
Wait. I want to kind of go back to a topic that you brought up right at the beginning, Kristen, about climate being a reason for Rob. I totally get that. And I feel like if you were to ask Bryce why he made the decision to not have kids, I think that's probably the only thing that he would say also. So I'm just kind of curious about like your thoughts on that, or like what does that mean?
I think it's even broader than just climate change. It's environmental issues in general. When my mom was born, looked up a statistic recently, there were 2.3 billion people on the planet, and now there are over 8 billion. So just in, you know, her lifespan, like, we've gone from 2.3 to 8 plus, I don't know where it is exactly, 8 plus billion people. I mean, this is like exponential. I mean, this is a ton of, like, literally it's exponential growth. And so, you know, the argument that we're not having enough kids these days doesn't really apply for me. Yeah, I mean, it's like he was an environmental science major, an ecologist and a biologist and a scientist. And so, you know, there's a lot to be said for, we're having an extraordinary impact on the planet. And I don't think, like, as someone who didn't have the drive to have kids, I'm not going to just have a kid just to have a kid. There's people out there who have, like, it's just like this strong desire, I think, to have a child, like the clock is ticking type of feeling. And I mean, those are people who are supposed to have them, but if you're not having that like super, super strong desire, then I think it's okay not to add another few people on the planet. We're certainly impacting climate. We're certainly impacting environment. Species are going extinct. Not to be, all gloom and doom about it, but like that is a reality. And like the amount of plastics in the ocean, pick an environmental topic, and it makes things worse because of people. Yeah. Go ahead.
I think that's such an interesting thing because I don't think it was until I met Lexi when Lexi was like, "What's your personality type or whatever?" I don't remember what is that, like ENTJ, whatever that stuff is.
The Enneagram.
Yes, and she was like, "What are you?" And I was like, I don't know. I'll go, I took it, whatever. And she was like, my it was a different test than that one, but it was something similar. And she was like, my personality type, one of my biggest concerns is the environment. And I will go into spirals about global warming and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, that's not at all what I spiral about. But like, I will say, and I, not to soapbox this at all, but like, I'm really bummed I didn't know about reusable diapers before like literally 2 months ago, because I'm like, man, I put so many diapers into that weight, into like the landfill. It's so terrible, right? We eliminated paper towels from our house like 6 months ago, and Brandon, like the change for Brandon was like, I hate this. This is terrible. I need paper towels. And now we go to my mom's house and he's like, Jan, where's the towel? And she's like, there's a paper towel right there. He's like, no. I don't want a paper towel. Like, can you give me a towel that we can like reuse? And we don't wash them often, the water conservation thing. I understand all of that stuff, right? But we're trying to do the best we can of like, we don't use plastic bags. We don't do any of that kind of stuff. And I know we're just one family and one person, but if I were to keep every single plastic bag that I used to use for an entire year, I cannot even imagine what that would have looked like, right? And I know like that's something that I think is important to me to teach the girls as well, right? Like it's very, very something that I'm very passionate about as well. And I think living where we do makes a big difference. Like I think living in different parts of the country and being around different people, you have different priorities and different thought processes on a lot of that stuff. I certainly think it's an interesting argument when people say we need more kids to backfill and to figure out how we're going to take care of all these people in the world. And I do think that is a valid concern, although AI, I'm sure, will take over and we'll be fine. And by that point, we'll be having a pill every day as our food instead of actually consuming
who needs
food.
People when we have robots?
Really? Yeah. So
we'll be in the Matrix.
There's a footprint calculator out there.
Really? Oof.
And where you can plug in, I don't know, are you a vegetarian? How often do you fly? Various things, how many miles a week do you drive? And then it'll say like what your footprint is on the planet. And there's like basically nothing you can do that is equivalent to having a child. Like having a child puts you in like the top level, because you're not only having a footprint, you're consuming everything for yourself, but you have just added another being on the planet that is consuming all of that as well. So I don't know, maybe that's an argument or not.
That's
again, I'm not necessarily saying like don't have children. Like you want children, have children. Like
it's too late.
If that's important, that's a consideration, right? I remember a couple summers ago, it was really dry. We had no monsoon season, and we made the poor decision to put lawn in our backyard, living in the high desert that we do. And we were getting ready to go out of town or something. We were talking to our neighbor about watering the lawn, and we were talking about how guilty we feel about watering the lawn, 2 or 3 times a week, whatever it was. And she looks at us and she goes, you guys aren't going to have kids. Water the lawn. There's your, you're not even going to use half the amount of water that you would if you had kids. So just water your damn lawn. And it was like, well, I mean, we probably should still be mindful of how much we water. But I had never thought about it that way. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting take on it.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Weston takes a bath every night. So every night he takes a bath. So it's a lot of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should all be so thoughtful of whatever we're doing, our impact. But and so it's not an out. Like I'm not just going to go and burn down a rainforest. Because it's not totally like I'm immune. But at the same time, like, sometimes I hear the argument that by me not having a child or by people not having children, they're selfish. And I also think that's a silly argument too.
That's a very silly argument.
I feel like it's selfish to bring a child in the world that you didn't or weren't sure that you even wanted. I think that would be more selfish than deciding not to have kids. And
there's selfish people who are moms. There's selfish people who are not moms. Like, it's kind of independent in my mind. You can be selfish or not.
The only reason
or having a child.
The only reason I could justify that statement was if somebody was like, listen, 1 million children need to be born into this country this year. You guys get to choose who get to have those kids. I would say, all right, you good potential moms, let's have you having kids instead of those people that are going to be terrible moms. But this is not the world we live in. So
that's like that show. Have you seen that show Silo on Apple TV? They get literally, they live in a silo under the ground, but they get lottery for who gets to have kids. And then they'll take out their birth control. And then sometimes they would pretend to take out their birth control and like not. And they would be trying and they're like, oh, it's just not happening for us. But really it's the higher ups were deciding who got to have kids and who didn't. Anyway, so this made me think of that whole spiral, but it's a pretty good show.
Thankfully, that's not the world we live in.
No, that would be so scary.
I mean, no, I don't mean it like
not here.
Like that,
not here.
I wouldn't mind there being like an aptitude test for having children. I think that would be fair. I mean, I guess that's not fair to say, like, because you were born into what you were born into, and there's not really much you can control. But there are certain people out there that unfortunately don't treat their children very well, and that makes me very sad.
Funny story. I'm going to call it the first date that Kristen and I ever had. I could tell it could get serious. And so I wanted to have the conversation about kids with her. And I asked her if she and Rob had planned to have kids. And she said no. And I, like in butthead, my immediate response was, okay, good. We can be friends. And I meant that in a really nice way, because I had this history of making friends with women and getting really close with them. And then they have kids and then like, poof, they're gone. And I understand, when you're younger, maybe in your 20s, like it's really hard to figure out how to balance growing a career, being in your 20s and having a kid and a family. Like I understand that something's got to give, right? But that had been my experience, and I could tell Kristen and I had the potential to be great friends. And so I didn't want to miss out on that, or I didn't want that to be a potential issue. So I don't know, in hindsight, maybe that was poor taste, but at the very least, it makes for a good story today.
It's a great story.
I will also admit that Lisa was the first of all of our friends to get pregnant, and I, besides Kristen, am probably closest with Lisa out of all of our friends, and my sister, but she doesn't count. She's my sister. I was worried that Lisa was going to have kids, and then it was like, nope, you're not a mom. Sorry, you just don't get it. Because to your point, Danielle, like you're around moms and you're like, oh, these are my people, and I can be a mom around them. And it's like, I feel like a lot of women then get around women that are not moms, and they're like, oh, you just don't get it.
Yeah, and good.
I was worried about that happening. No, I don't think you guys do it at all. I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
But I have definitely been around people that have. And so that had been my experience. I was worried about that with Lisa. And obviously that has not been an issue. And I'm very appreciative of that. But I do think that it has to go both ways, right? Like we'll have game nights where they come over, or we'll have girls' nights with no kids. And I can tell that the moms in the group are trying really hard. And Lisa, you've brought this up before, to not talk about their kids, because not all of us there have kids or want kids. And it's like, why? It's a huge part of your life. I'm going to talk about my dog.
Yeah.
So, it's part of your life. I care about you. I care about your kids. I care about your husband. I care about your dog. Let's talk about all of it. I care about your job. Like, don't avoid that conversation just because I made the decision to not have kids. Can I relate? Probably not to some things, but that doesn't mean that I don't want to hear about it. That doesn't mean that I don't have questions about it. Like, yeah. So I definitely think that it needs to go both ways in order for that like friendship to continue on.
We definitely had a conversation early on, and I don't know if it was when I was pregnant. I think it was when I was pregnant and I was going through a really hard time, like depression wise. And then I had postpartum depression after, but I remember saying something to Mickella and she's like, "Are you breaking up with me?" And I was like, no, but I feel like you're not going to want to be with me anymore because I have a kid. And we had a very real conversation of like, no, I'm not going to just ditch you because you have a kid. Like, yeah, okay, our lives are going in different ways, but it doesn't mean we have to not be friends anymore. We don't, that I don't like you anymore because you decided to have this little being, it's like.
Or that we now all of a sudden have nothing in common.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it's been so awesome. Like, I think when Hannah was born, we had a girls' night like 2 weeks after I had Hannah, and I needed that night so badly. I couldn't even tell you. Like, I think I cried. Like, what did I do to you guys? Like, when I was there, like, I can't believe I did this. Right. And now, like, it's really fun for me to be like, I'm going out tonight. And Hannah's like, who are you going out with? And I'll be like, oh, I'm going to go to Mickella's house and I'm going to see Kristen and, all the girls. And she's like, I'm going to come. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but you can't. And I'm very thankful for that, right? Like, I'm thankful I have my crew because we've talked about it before. Like, my mom did not have friends when I was growing up because she felt like that was too selfish to have a full-time job and then spend any time away from us when she had a minute away from work. And it was like, I think I would have benefited a lot to see her because she needed self-esteem that she never had, that I think women could have helped her with that we couldn't. I mean, we were kids, right? We were just leeching off of her. That's what kids do. And I think that's really challenging when you don't have a crowd that you can send text to. Like, I send random texts to you guys all the time. And you're probably like, what is she talking about? But I just need that outlet of like, all right, let's talk about it, right? Like, let's get this out here and let's make me feel better today because I'm feeling down on myself. And it's such an awesome thing to have girls, to have daughters that I can say, you know what? I have great friends that are here for me and will build me up when I need them. And I'm hopeful that when my girls decide that they can't talk to me, that they can run to one of you guys and say, you know what? My mom's being crazy and I need you to help me because she's crazy, right? Because I'm sure that is very real and very possible that could happen, and I'm thankful for you all. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for not dumping us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for not dumping us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I do think it's like different because like we're like in our 30s now. And because I remember being like
mid 40s. Hello.
Oh, well,
we're beyond.
You have to out yourself.
You're basically in your 30s because you don't have kids. They age you fast.
Yeah.
45, but I still look 35.
Yes. No, so like, I don't know, when I was 20 and I had two friends that got pregnant when we were like all 21, and it was like they were living different lives than me because I was still in college and starting my career. And then even like when I worked with friends who got pregnant and had kids, it's like there were certain questions I didn't ask or like know to ask or, I don't know. I was still hanging out with them, but like it was different. And so then when becoming a mom, I'm like, oh, like this is like, it's like a whole different thing, but it's makes me feel bad that I didn't know, like, oh, I should have asked more, but I'm stumbling over my words. But I will say, like, Mickella, I know that you're really great with asking questions, like way better than me. Like how am I doing? And you're always checking in on Weston. And so like, I really appreciate that. But it's just, yeah, I think now that we're in our 30s, it's like you make quality friends over quantity. And so, yeah. It's just awesome.
Again, thank you both for coming on here, because I do think that it's, first of all, a mom podcast. So you're probably like, what do they want to know about not being a mom? But I think it's really awesome. Like when we had Mickella on the podcast in the beginning, people would say to us, I want to hear more from her. I want to know more of why she made that decision. Because we do have people that listen that are still deciding whether they're going to have kids or whether they're going to have their third or fourth kid. And I think you guys make some really great, compelling arguments on that. And I am thankful for you guys being so open and sharing with us all of the points that you did today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you guys. And last thing I want to say is I don't judge people for wanting to have kids. That is your decision just as much as it's my decision to not have kids. So just because I feel one way doesn't mean that I think that the other way is wrong or bad or inconsiderate or whatever. So
that's awesome.
Like Danielle can be sad and happy about my decision at the same time. I think both can be true. So kudos to all the moms out there and all the people that have made the decision to bring children into this world.
I thought your closing thing was going to be, don't die. I don't want 15 kids.
Also, don't die. I really don't want to raise 15 kids. Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Thank you again so much for listening to us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, please consider giving us 5 stars so other mothers out there like you can find us and listen. If you would like, you could follow us on any of our socials at Mom Jeans, the podcast. If you have questions, would like to send us your birth story, or give us suggestions or things that you would like to hear, please email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. See you next week.